Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Daria and it's been almost 2 years since I've been living in Amsterdam, and I thought this is a really good time to talk about what I personally think the advantages and disadvantages of living here are. Let's start off with the advantages. So the first and foremost, what I think is the most important advantage is the dog-friendly culture. I take my dog everywhere with me. She rides on public transport with me, so that's buses, trams, trains, and most of that, at least within the city, is free. If we travel outside of Amsterdam, then there's a day tariff for dogs, which is actually €3.30, which is quite cheap, especially compared to what tickets for people cost around the country, of course. But it's not just transportation, it's also just the overall dog-friendly culture. There's always water and treats for dogs almost everywhere we go. Of course, cafes and restaurants, those are quite obvious. But apart from that, there's also treats in DHL, Douglas, in the flower shop we go. So most of the places we actually go really give out treats and make sure that, you know, it's not just the customer, the person who is taken care of, but also their pets. So I think that's really great. The second advantage, in my point of view, is the international community that we have in Amsterdam. The city is just flooded with expats. I'm quite sure that there's almost as many expats as there are Dutch people nowadays, and most people come to either study and then stay here, or a lot of people come to work, mostly because, or one of the reasons is because there's a specific tax benefit, a 30% ruling, that's what it's called, which means that 30% of your income is not taxed for the first 5 years, which gives you a huge opportunity in terms of your income that you can get here. So one of the reasons why there's so many expats here who are enjoying this basically tax benefit. And I think that it's amazing having an international community. The third benefit I personally enjoy in Amsterdam is the travel opportunities, let's call it that. What I mean by that, of course, travel is very easy in Europe in general, in many different countries and cities, but there are two specific points that I like about specifically living in Amsterdam. The first one is the availability of relatively cheap options and different options to actually go somewhere. So that's train, that's plane, that's bus, and of course you can also rent a car, and there are millions, or well, maybe not millions, but definitely a lot of apps and other features that help you plan your trip in the most, let's say, convenient way, but also in a cheap way. As an example, last weekend I flew to Copenhagen for only €120, and the trip was super quick both ways. So that's really a big plus. The second point that I had in terms of transportation is, I think, the reliability. Even though, for example, Germany is super famous for its whole train system, I think actually the trains in the Netherlands are more reliable. You can really count on it being on time, always there, and yeah, I haven't really had any issues with that, and I also think it's really easy to use here. So that's definitely a second plus that I see in terms of transportation here. Now, let's talk about the cons. The first one for me, and probably the biggest one yet, is spontaneity, or actually the lack of spontaneous, let's say, events. People here, especially Dutch people, really like to plan in advance, and it could be weeks, or it could actually even be months. And I'm gonna bring up this little photo here, and I'm sorry, Julia, for bringing it up, but this is really an example of me trying to plan back in February, trying to plan just a casual get together of coffee or just a drink with a friend of mine who had only time in March, and as you can see, not all of her time was already free in March. So to me, people really like to plan, and I am a super spontaneous person. I really like to call someone up and ask them, hey, what are you doing? I don't know, in an hour, do you want to grab a bite or a drink, or go to the beach or do something? And that has been at least very hard for me to adjust to. But definitely, if you're not one of those people, it won't be difficult to integrate, let's say, into this way of life. So the second con I'm going to point out is the medical system, which is actually quite a new con for me because I usually actually don't go to the doctor that often. And let me explain how things work here. So you have to go to a general practitioner who you register to and sign up to. So it's not just any general practitioner, it's a specific one. And you have to go to a GP first before being able to actually go to a specialized doctor if you need one. So the problem is that this happened twice in the past couple of months, is that I went to the GP. Actually, one time they didn't even sign me up. They said they don't think that there's any need for me to visit a doctor, which I personally disagree with because it had taken me quite a while to recover and medicine was not helping at all. The second time I actually did get to the GP, but the GP spent 5 minutes talking to me, no tests, no nothing, prescribed me some drugs that didn't end up working. So I'm very skeptical about this type of medicine because to me personally, I think if you work on something before it evolves into an actual, like, I don't know, heavier illness, let's call it that, it's better. So kind of preventative medicine to me sounds better. And the third con I'm gonna name today is food in general. Now I'm gonna give a caveat before I start that if you want different types of food, in general, you can get it. There's a huge amount of restaurants here that can serve you Indian food, Middle Eastern, Italian, whatever you like. There's plenty of options for that and they're quite good. But what I mean by food is mostly like the eating habits of especially locals. People focus a lot on bread and milk, which to me is a bit strange. Specifically drinking milk like during lunch. I've never seen that anywhere else in the world. But that's definitely kind of like a Dutch habit to do that, eating habit. And I have to say that the food options, for example, in canteens at the office are quite scarce. And also if you go into like a typical Dutch place, they would also be quite scarce in my opinion. So those are the things that I could think of off the top of my head. Comment below if you live in Amsterdam and if there's any other pro or con that you see and are either like amazed by or the other way around, that you actually really don't like something that's that's been bothering you for a while. And if you're not in Amsterdam, let me know what city you live in and what you think the pros and cons of those cities are. And hope to see you again in the next video. Don't forget to subscribe and like this video.